The first thing the manager said was not my name. There is no payment authorization linked to this table tonight. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Trust Channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. Daniel's voice was even, professional, almost gentle. He was looking at his tablet, not at me. Then he lifted his eyes briefly to my daughter. Elena's smile faltered. Not all at once, just enough that I noticed. I was still standing beside the table when it happened, my coat on, my purse hanging from my arm. The plates in front of them were already empty. Wine glasses sat half forgotten. Rings of moisture collecting at the base. I had arrived exactly when I was told to come. We're already here, Elena had texted. Just join us when you can. You're late, she said now, lightly, as if she were teasing a friend instead of greeting her mother. We finished a while ago. I looked at her face, at the way she kept her expression pleasant, even as Daniel waited. I am Maribel Henshaw. I am 71 years old. I have learned to read that look. It is the look Elena uses when she expects things to go smoothly. You don't mind covering it, right? She added, still smiling. She said it the way people say the weather will turn, a fact, not a request. Daniel shifted his weight. I just need a payment method from the party dining tonight, he said. That was when it settled in. Not the bill, not the amount, the realization itself. I had not been invited to share the meal. I had been invited to arrive after it ended. Elena glanced at the table, then back at me, her confidence wavering for the first time. There's usually no issue, she said quickly. My mother takes care of things. I didn't answer her. I met Daniel's eyes instead. He waited, patient, giving me space I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The quiet stretched. In that silence, something shifted inside me, small, precise, irreversible. I pulled out the chair they had left empty. Not to sit and eat, just to sit, just to be present. Elena watched me closely now, her smile gone entirely. I knew, then, that this dinner had never been about celebrating together. It had been about certainty, and certainty, once broken, does not repair itself easily. I took a breath and finally sat down. Not because I was hungry, but because standing any longer would have felt like permission. My name is Maribel Henshaw. I am 71 years old. Widowed for 11 years, and for most of my life, I have been the person people leaned on without asking if I could carry the weight. After Victor died, things changed quietly. Not all at once, not dramatically. People think grief arrives like a storm. For me, it was more like a slow leak. I kept going, I paid bills, I answered calls, I showed up. That was always my strength. Reliability. Elena learned that early. When she was younger, she would call and say, Mom, I'm short this month. I never asked how short. I never asked why. I transferred the money and told myself it was temporary. When she said, I'll pay you back, I said, don't worry about it, and meant it. At the table, she folded her hands in front of her, eyes flicking between me and Daniel. You know I've just been so busy lately, she said, her voice softer now. Everything hit at once. I nodded, the way I always did. Busy. Everything at once. Those words had been doing a lot of work for years. Victor used to tease me about it. You smooth things before they even wrinkle, he'd say. One day, they'll stop noticing the ironing. I laughed back then. I didn't see the warning. Elena never knew how much I had. I let her believe my retirement was modest, carefully planned, nothing extravagant. It kept things simple. It also kept the requests coming. She learned that no matter what she spent, no matter how late she called, I would step in and make it work, across from me. She cleared her throat. Mom, she said, carefully now, We can't hold the table forever. There it was. Not gratitude, not concern, just the expectation that I would move, adjust, solve. I realized something then. Being dependable had never meant being valued. It meant being predictable. And predictability, once assumed, becomes something people feel entitled to use. Elena tapped the edge of the table with her fingernail, a small, impatient rhythm she'd picked up in recent years. "We didn't think you'd want to wait," she said. "You know how long menus take." That line landed easily, like something she'd practiced. I nodded again, slower this time. "When did you decide to come here?" She hesitated. "Just a beat. Earlier today. Not when she called me. Not when she texted. Earlier. Before I was even part of the plan. This wasn't the first time. It had been happening for years. Quietly enough that I convinced myself it was coincidence. A birthday dinner where the reservation was already locked in. A celebration where the check arrived before I'd finished my water. Always the same explanation. We already ordered. "We didn't know when you'd get here." "You're so flexible, Mom." Flexible. That word had followed me like a compliment that never quite was one. I remembered a dinner last winter. Elena had called while I was still in my coat, keys in hand. "We're at that new place downtown," she'd said. "The one everyone's talking about. Just come when you can." When I arrived, the table was full of half-finished plates. The server asked if I wanted dessert. No one asked what I'd wanted for dinner. Tonight felt exactly the same. I glanced at the menu, still closed beside Elena's elbow. "Do you remember what I like?" I asked. She smiled without looking at me. "You're not picky." That wasn't true. I just stopped saying what I wanted because it slowed things down. Daniel stood a few steps away, waiting. Elena leaned toward him. "The tasting menu was incredible," she said brightly. "Everything just melted." I noticed then what I'd noticed before but never named. The places she chose never listed prices, not on the menu, not out loud. Just an unspoken understanding that someone else would handle it. That someone had always been me. Elena finally met my eyes. "You don't mind?" "Right," she said again. Softer now. "It's just easier this way. Easier for her." I felt the patterns settle into place. Solid and unmistakable. I had never been late to these dinners. I had been deliberately timed. "You really are late," Elena said again, this time with a small laugh, as if repeating it might turn it into a joke instead of a fact she wanted me to absorb. "We didn't think you'd make it at all." I glanced at my phone. I had arrived exactly when she told me to. I didn't point that out. Lucas finally looked up from his place setting. "Traffic's been awful," he offered, then immediately dropped his gaze back to the table. It wasn't an excuse. It was a shield. He used it often. Elena leaned back in her chair, relaxed now that the words had been said. "Anyway," she continued, waving a hand lightly, "it worked out. You don't mind covering tonight." Right. There it was again, not framed as help, not even framed as a favor. Just an expectation placed gently on the table between us, like something that had always belonged there. I didn't say I would. I replied, keeping my voice even. She blinked, surprised for just a fraction of a second. "Of course not," she said quickly. "I just assumed." Lucas shifted in his seat. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He never did. Silence had become his contribution. The server returned, smiling politely. "Would anyone like dessert this evening?" "Yes," Elena said immediately. "The chocolate torte. And the custard. We'll share." She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't ask if I wanted anything. The server turned to me out of habit. Pen poised. "I'm fine," I said. Elena smiled again, satisfied. "She doesn't really eat dessert," she explained, as if she knew my body better than I did, as if my preferences were a footnote she could summarize. The server nodded and left. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, listening to Elena talk about the wine she'd ordered earlier. About how the sommelier had praised her choice, Lucas nodded along, adding the occasional agreement. No one apologized for starting without me. No one acknowledged that I hadn't eaten. When the dessert arrived, Elena laughed softly. "See, perfect timing," she said. "You came just in time for the bill." Lucas cleared his throat. "Elena?" he murmured. She ignored him. Daniel stood nearby now, waiting, the leather folder resting lightly in his hand. Elena glanced at it, then at me, her confidence fully restored. This was the part she understood. This was where things always settled. I felt the sting then, not sharp, but deep. Not from the money, but from the certainty. They had already finished, already ordered, already enjoyed themselves. All that remained was the part they believed I would handle, as I always had. I felt the familiar urge rise in me, the one that always arrived right before I made things easier for everyone else. The urge to explain, to smooth, to say something that would let them relax and move on. I didn't. Elena waited, her head tilted slightly, confident the pause would end the way it always had. "Mom," she said gently, as if she were guiding a child through a misunderstanding. "It's fine. We'll sort it out." Sort it out, meaning I would. Lucas glanced at me, then away, his silence pressed against the table. Heavy and practiced. He had learned, like Elena, that this part didn't require his involvement. I looked down at my hands, resting quietly in my lap. They weren't shaking. That surprised me. For years. Moments like this had tightened something in my chest, made me rush to fill the space before it became uncomfortable. Tonight, the discomfort felt different. Useful. "This isn't about tonight," I said finally. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Elena frowned. "What do you mean I didn't answer her right away?" I was remembering Victor instead, how he used to watch these exchanges from the edge of the room, saying little, noticing everything, once. After Elena had left with another casual thank you and an unreturned promise, he had touched my arm and said, "Be careful. Mari, when you fix things quietly, people start believing they're supposed to break." I had laughed then, told him he was overthinking it. Now, sitting across from my daughter, I understood what he had seen. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't poor timing or bad communication. It was a system that worked because I kept it running. Elena leaned forward. "Mom, you're being strange," she said. "If something's wrong, just say it." That was the irony. I had been saying it for years in smaller ways, hesitations, half statements, moments I swallowed to keep the peace. Each time I stayed quiet, the expectation grew stronger. My silence hadn't protected the relationship. It had trained it. Daniel shifted nearby, still waiting. His presence a reminder that time was moving whether I filled it or not. I lifted my gaze and met Elena's eyes. I didn't argue. I didn't justify myself. I simply stayed quiet. For the first time, I let the smooth surface crack on its own. I lifted my hand slightly and caught Daniel's attention before Elena could speak again. "Could I talk to you for a moment?" I asked. Daniel nodded at once. He stepped closer, his posture open, unhurried. Of course. Elena's eyes flicked to him, then to me. "Mom," she said, a warning threaded through her voice. "There's really no need to make this complicated." "I'm not," I replied. "I'm asking a question." Daniel waited. I kept my voice low, steady. "Can you check the payment arrangements that have been tied to this table in the past?" He tapped on his tablet, scrolling with practiced ease. The seconds stretched. Lucas shifted in his chair, finally looking at the screen as if he might read something there that would reassure him. Daniel's expression didn't change much, but something in his eyes sharpened. "There's no active authorization on file for tonight," he said. Then, after another glance at the screen, Actually, it looks like the previous authorizations were removed a few weeks ago. Elena's chair creaked as she sat up straighter. Removed, she repeated. That can't be right. Daniel nodded politely. They were cleared at the request of the account holder. Her gaze snapped to me. The confidence she'd worn all evening cracked, replaced by something tighter. What did you do? She asked. Not quietly anymore. I didn't do anything tonight. I said, I made a decision earlier. Lucas opened his mouth, then closed it again. His hands were clenched now, resting on the edge of the table. Daniel glanced between us. Professional, but alert. I'll just need a payment method from the party dining this evening, he said, his tone unchanged. Elena laughed once, sharp and brittle. This is ridiculous. There's always been an understanding. I met her eyes. There's been an assumption. She looked away, then back at Daniel. Can you just put it through the way it's always been done? I'm sorry, he said gently. I can't. The silence that followed was heavier than before, not awkward. Exposed. Elena's fingers curled around her napkin, twisting it without realizing. She wasn't angry yet. She was calculating. I felt something shift inside me then. Not triumph, not relief, control. For the first time in years, the ground beneath the table no longer tilted toward her. Daniel waited, patient, giving space to a moment that had clearly arrived without warning. I won't be covering dinner tonight, I said. The words landed cleanly. No tremor, no apology. Elena stared at me for a second, then laughed. It was quick and sharp. The kind of laugh meant to pull the moment back into place. Okay, she said. Very funny. I'm serious. The laugh stopped. Her mouth remained slightly open, as if she were waiting for the rest of the sentence. When it didn't come, her eyes flicked to Daniel. There's been a misunderstanding, she said. My mother always takes care of things. I used to, I replied. Not tonight. Lucas shifted beside her, his chair scraping softly against the floor. He looked at Elena, then at me, then down at his hands. He said nothing. Silence, again. But this time it worked against them. Daniel cleared his throat gently. How would you like to proceed? Separate checks. I said. Elena's head snapped toward me. Separate? Yes, she scoffed. You can't be serious. I am. Daniel nodded once. Already moving. Very well. Elena's face flushed. This is embarrassing, she hissed, lowering her voice. Do you have any idea how this looks? I met her gaze. I know exactly how it looks. Lucas leaned in slightly. Elena, he murmured. Not quite choosing a side. Let's just don't, she snapped. Then she turned back to Daniel, her tone forced into politeness. Just give us a moment. Daniel stepped away. Elena reached into her bag. Her movements suddenly hurried. She pulled out her phone, a lipstick, a folded receipt. Her fingers dug deeper, faster. The confidence she'd worn all evening had evaporated. Where is it? She muttered. Lucas finally spoke. Do you have your card? Yes, she said sharply. I always have it. She didn't. Her hands paused. She checked another pocket, then another, her breathing quickening. I watched quietly, my hands folded, my posture unchanged. This is unbelievable, she said, her voice rising despite herself. You knew this would happen. I knew it might. I said, that's why I didn't stop it. She looked at me then, not with irritation, but with something closer to panic. Mom, she said, the words suddenly heavy. Fix this. I didn't move. Daniel returned, holding 2 slim folders. He placed one in front of me, one in front of Elena. The table felt very still. Lucas stared at the folder as if it might open itself. Elena swallowed hard and reached for her phone again, already scrolling, already calculating who else she could call. For the first time in her adult life, the solution was not sitting across from her. The payment took longer than it should have. Daniel waited while Elena fumbled, her voice low and tight as she spoke into her phone. "No, I need it now," she whispered. "I don't care how you do it." Lucas stood beside her, silent, his hands shoved into his pockets like he didn't know where else to put them. When Daniel returned, he handed Elena the folder again. "We'll need to complete this before closing," he said kindly. Elena signed with a sharp stroke, her jaw set. When she stood, she didn't look at Daniel. She looked straight at me. "You humiliated me," she said. The words were flat, rehearsed. "You could have handled this privately." "I did," I replied. "I handled my part." Her laugh came out wrong this time. Thin and brittle. "Your part," she repeated. "We're family." "Mom, you don't do this to family." Lucas shifted again. "Maybe we should just go," he said quietly. Elena ignored him. "Do you know how this made me look?" she continued, her voice rising. "Everyone saw. The staff, the people at the next table. You made me look irresponsible." I met her eyes. "You are responsible." That stopped her. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her anger flickered, uncertain, as if it had lost its footing. For a moment, I saw something else underneath it, not rage, fear. This wasn't supposed to happen. She said, more to herself than to me, "No." I agreed. It wasn't. She pressed her lips together, blinking rapidly. "You always help," she said. "Softer now. You always fix things." "I used to." I said, "That's why it kept happening." Daniel stepped back, giving us space. Lucas touched Elena's arm, but she shrugged him off. Her eyes darted around the room, calculating again, searching for another exit that wasn't there. As we walked out, she fell a step behind me. "Mom," she said, her voice strained. "Call me tomorrow. We need to talk about this." I paused at the door and turned just enough for her to see my face. "There's nothing to talk about tonight," I said. "Outside." The air felt sharper. I didn't wait for them. Behind me, I heard Elena's heels falter, her pace uneven now. Certainty had carried her for years. Without it, every step suddenly required effort. The next morning, I didn't make a phone call. I opened my laptop. I removed my name from every shared account Elena had access to. Each automatic payment, each quiet transfer that had once felt like care and now read like permission. I didn't announce it. I didn't warn her. I didn't leave a note explaining myself. I simply closed the doors I had spent years holding open. My phone rang that afternoon. I let it ring. That evening, the messages started. "Mom, are you busy? We need to talk. This isn't fair." I read them without replying. The next day, the tone shifted. "There's an issue with my card. The bank froze something. Can you just help me this once?" I set the phone face down. On the third day, she called again. This time, her voice cracked through the voicemail. "I don't understand what's happening," she said. "Things are falling apart." They weren't falling apart. They were standing on their own for the first time. A week later, Daniel's restaurant appeared in a photo Elena posted online. The table was smaller, the caption was vague, no tags, no celebration. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Luxury looks different when no one rescues you at the end of the meal. When Elena finally showed up at my door, I didn't invite her in. We stood there, the space between us doing the talking. "I just need a little time," she said. "I've already given you years," I replied. She nodded. Once, understanding something she hadn't before. I didn't lose my daughter. I lost the role she assigned me, the one that paid, fixed, and stayed quiet. What I took back wasn't money. It was authority over my own life. There's a lesson in that. One I learned late but learned well. Love doesn't require self-erasure. Support isn't silence. And boundaries are not punishments. They're the terms under which respect survives. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories about family, boundaries, and quiet strength. If you stopped rescuing the people who take you for granted, what would finally change?